The Star Wars comics are filled with super interesting characters and tell amazing stories that we don't get to see in the movies.
Larry, I don't think Patrick knows how to use a book properly.
I mean, who can forget about the iconic Jedi Master Bates? Yes, that is a real character. And who didn't enjoy seeing Vader straight up kill an obsessed fangirl because she looked at him without his mask? That right there is just peak Star Wars. But in all seriousness, I can't stress enough how awesome the Star Wars comics are. We get to see more of characters like Dirge and Sora Bulk while being introduced to other really interesting characters like Tol Score and Mr. Bones. I personally have always enjoyed these stories, which is why today I decided to build 3 mocks featuring some of my favorite stories from the Star Wars comics. With that being said, I suggest you sit back and relax, maybe grab yourself a Mon Cala margarita, and enjoy as I build 3 of my favorite stories from the Star Wars comics. This first story comes from my personal collection and features the 3 greatest darkseid users during the Clone Wars: Maul, Dooku, and Palpatine. And Grievous was there too.
Charlie was the hero, and I guess Pim was there too.
In the Darth Maul Son of Dathomir comics, we see a story where Maul and a possessed Count Dooku fight Palpatine and General Grievous on Dathomir. Dooku is actually possessed by Mother Talzin, which is why he's fighting his Sith Master Palpatine. But in the end, Mother Talzin is defeated by Palpatine and Dooku combined and is killed by General Grievous right in front of Maul, which honestly was a pretty common death for a Night Sister at that time. I wanted to build the moment their fight begins in the caves of Dathomir, and I started by making the floors of the cave by using a simple plate and tile technique with some dark gray pieces. After that, I made a pretty simple wall design using a similar technique, but this time I built it in a snot style, which I really liked. This mock was pretty minifig forward, but it was a story I wanted to tell because this comic has always been really interesting to me. This is just one example of the comic showing what happens to 2 different characters we mysteriously stopped seeing during the Clone Wars, and is another reason why you should read the Star Wars comics. Now this second build is one that has been requested by one of my subscribers a ton, and I am nothing if not a people pleaser. This build is from the Vader comics, where he enters the Dark Dimension using an ancient Sith relic from his temple on Mustafar. He goes on a journey through his past and finds himself at the steps of the Jedi Temple in front of a ton of Jedi who are ready to fight him. But Vader goes absolutely wild, killing all of them, even Yoda, with ease. I wanted to recreate this scene and even make a custom Dark Dimensions Vader in order to give the people what they want. I wanted to build the steps of the Jedi Temple that we see this fight take place on in the Vader comics. In the comics, we see a lot of dark gray, but I didn't want to make another dark gray build given the fact that I just made one. And I know the Jedi Temple is typically tan, however, I wanted to save some of my tan pieces for my next build.
That's a surprise tool that can help us later.
So, to compromise, I decided to make the steps using a tan outline and some light gray pieces to add some color and variety to the mock. And this build was an eye-opening experience, and the fact that it helped me realize how little of these tan pieces I really have. Honestly, maybe a bricklink order will have to be made. But once I finished these steps, it was time to add the minifigs. I added a bunch of Jedi Masters like Yoda, Mace Windu, Ki-Adi, Kit Fisto, Shaak Ti, some more, and I even added a few temple guards for a finishing touch. Now it was time to just add the Dark Dimensions Vader minifig that I talked about. Now I spent a lot of time looking for a minifig that resembled the Dark Dimensions Vader we see in the comics. And after a while, I found this Lego Flamma minifigure, and I thought it looked incredibly similar to the Dark Dimensions Vader. In the comics though, he has white arms and legs, so I decided to swap them into this Flamma minifig. I'm really happy with how this turned out because I think it is super accurate to the Dark Dimensions Vader we see in the comics, but I'm curious to hear what you think about this one. Do you think this minifig looks like the Dark Dimensions Vader? Let me know, and let's get into the third and final build. Now the final build comes from a comic called Star Wars Adventures: The Clone Wars Battle Tales Issue 1. Kind of long-winded, but hey, who am I to talk? These comics are a little childish in my opinion, but I still think they have some good stories in them and are worth the read. In this story, we see Cody, Rex, and Wolf are separated from their Jedi generals on the planet Hissine, and they are under a flurry of laser bolts. But the Jedi generals leap out and destroy the droids just in time, saving Rex, Cody, and Wolf.
This birthday party's hot!
This was a fun build to make and one that I'm glad I saved my tan tiles and plates for. The road was mainly tan, but I did add some green grassy areas to add a pop of color here and there. But once I finished that, I used this tree design from the past to create the trees we see in the comics, and I wanted to make them all this purple color, but I did not have enough pieces, so I mixed in these as well. Once I added those trees in, I added a few plant pieces here and there to really get that foresty feel that we see in the comics. Then all that was left was to add the minifigs. comics. I started with a group of B1 battle droids, and I even added one that was shot using this snowflake piece. I got this idea from a post on Instagram I saw by Hypolite Bricks, so shout out to him. He has some really cool builds, honestly. I added a couple Phase 1 troopers and then moved on to the main boys. I put my realistic Phase 1 Rex fighting alongside a couple other clone troopers, then I added Commander Cody and Wolf in the back of the fight straight yapping. In the back of the fight, I added Obi-Wan, Anakin, and Plo Koon leaping into the battle to scrap a few clankers and save their clone commanders.
Clanker is our word, but you can call me Clanka.
I also noticed that these grass pieces are the perfect size to add a couple of these lightsaber colors to make it really look like a battle is going on in this build. I'm not gonna lie, this third and final build was my favorite. I think it had a good variety of color, and I always love a good clone battle. Sue me. But as always, let me know what you thought. Out of these 3 builds today, which one was your favorite? And are there other comic moments you want to see in Lego form? I've been reading a lot of the Star Wars comics lately, so who knows, there might even be another one of these in the future. If you like this video though, then YouTube thinks you like this one here. And if you want to see some cool minifig upgrades, then check out this other video here. But as always, thanks for swinging by the cantina today. I wish you safe travels, and I'll see you in the next one.